All right. Good evening, guys, and welcome to the first live official episode of the Third Banner Pod. Tonight, you've got me, Ash, Kyle, Connor, and Josh here tonight. The crew for you on the Third Banner Pod's first debut episode. Um, and we're going to talk about the bitter end, the painful end to basketball season. I know it was a long, hard road, but the season has finally come to a painful end.
It's almost like
I
we
don't
have to
know.
talk about this. We've talked about it a million times, but now that it's finally over, where do you start? It was I don't know. It's been very disappointing season. I'm more disappointed in the way Kenny Payne is approaching how the season went and what he's going to do about it. It's like if you could actually have a worse press conference than the regular season, he did it. And he did it in about 1 minute worth of talking. And it's beyond anything I can understand.
It's like Satterfield when he said we need to love him up, but he literally just said that in his press conference.
I was trying to explain to my wife a good analogy for the season, and I was like, well, it's like we had an awkward first date where you're guaranteed pretty much a second date at this point, It's just not at all what anybody expected. I think, some of the things that we had hoped or expected Kenny Payne to do well just did not come through. And that really started, the second he took the job, with that first week where he was kind of stuck in New York. And then we heard about all these big name transfers and such was guaranteed, it was a sure thing. And just none of it came to fruition. And, the best part, a good microcosm for the season is a player gets added mid-year and you think, oh my God, it's finally going to be a guard and it's a big, right? Just, disappointing. Painful. Painful is the best way to put it.
Very much so. Very much.
I didn't get to see most of the game yesterday because, it was at 3:30 Central Time, so I was at work. I was watching it on my phone. So from what I saw, we in the first half looked fine, and then in the second half it just went to hell. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what they did. Their best player's out. Or was out. He played the night against UNC, but he was out, and we still lost by 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where this wasn't a good team to begin with. A fully rostered Boston College is not a team anybody should be afraid of, especially in a down ACC when they are not near the top of the league. But they spanked us. We got spanked all year on the road in the neutral games. The only shot we ever had of beating anybody all season was at the Yum. And I want to be very clear that everything we talk about, I know there are people in the Louisville sports Twitter sphere and social media, and there are fans that they don't believe Kenny Payne's responsible for any of this. And that's perfectly fine. That's your opinion. But I will say that on this podcast, I think we've talked enough. We talked plenty about this. It always starts at the top for me, and that's just my leadership background. I don't know about you guys, and I've had great leaders. I've had not so great leaders. I've been in leadership positions, and it always starts with you. And everything we talk about on this podcast, it's basketball related. So I know people try to push this whole there's non-related issues that have nothing to do with basketball as to why people are frustrated with Kenny Payne. And there may be a very select minority of people that feel that way. It's not on this podcast. With that being said, he gets an F for the whole season for coaching. He gets an F for the offseason, whipped on the portal. He did not have guys prepared from game one to the very last game. We consistently underachieved. And that's for a team that I think most of us, when we talked about it, we expected this team to struggle. We expected this to be a rebuilding season. And when I think of a rebuild and I look at the roster we had, which was not great, I saw around 15-15. I thought if we overachieve, we'll make an NIT with a slight winning record. If we underachieve, we'll be like last year where we'll win 12 games. And then we did what we did. And it's not that everything is Kenny Payne's fault. It's that it starts with him.
But
and even when it's not his fault, indirectly, he runs the program. And then what I saw in that press conference after the game is a man who does not have a pulse for this fan base. He does not have a feel for exactly what it is he's supposed to be doing, what he's responsible for. The impression I get, and I'll pass it off to you guys, is that this roster is not his fault, and it's just he needs better players, and it's just the players' fault for not being good enough. And maybe I'm misinterpreting. I'm open to the idea that I am misinterpreting his stance. But that's the impression I get, is that, the only problem here, it's not the staff. It's certainly not him. It's all these players, which, by the way, 3 or 4 of them are guys he specifically sought out. And two of those 3 players hardly play at all on this team. So anyway, you guys can have it after that. What do you guys think? I mean, how do you think he approaches this?
When I listened to Ethan last night, he said something along the lines of Kenny Payne feels like, essentially that he's doing us a favor being our coach and he's going to help us. 4-28 doesn't help you. 4-28 doesn't help you if you're Lenore Ryan. Much less Louisville. Like, I don't get it. Right. And the people that say that you can't criticize, I'm criticizing being 4-28. That's not acceptable anywhere.
We are criticizing wins and losses. We are criticizing the lack of effort. We are criticizing the defense or lack thereof that was an entire season. And that's what it comes down to. And the lack of player development outside of maybe JJ Traynor, outside of L. Ellis, who's been solid. Mostly,
I wouldn't even say L, because he's not a one guard. He literally got thrown into that position because we didn't have anybody else.
Well, I just mean that he's played solid, and I think he's improved some of his decision making throughout the year. JJ Traynor's gotten better. Mike James, you could argue, has gotten better, but nobody's gotten to the point where they've crushed it out there besides maybe L. Ellis. And then all those other guys, they did not develop at all throughout the season. And that's a big disappointment. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think for me, generally what you're saying, Kyle, is we're talking about Kenny Payne, the coach, not Kenny Payne, the person. Kenny Payne, the coach, has not been great. He's been awful, to be honest.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, and he's a great public speaker. If you want to find something, he seems to relate to our alumni well. Just trying to find something.
He connects with people, and I think he would be good in an assistant coach role where he is a guy that the players can connect closely to and lean on, when a coach, as more of a disciplinarian, puts this rigorous system in place, and then the players, in order to get through the hard times, lean on a guy like a Kenny Payne, who I think he's great at that. But a head coach has to be a strategic planner. They have to be a strategic manager, and they have to have rigorous systems in place, and they have to go balls to the wall all the time. It's not a part-time job. And I don't know. I wouldn't ask these questions about what he was doing when he first got hired, when he went to New York for over a week, didn't stay in contact with really anybody. I wouldn't care if we were landing a bunch of guys in the portal, if there was some plan that we could see playing out. And that's what we were told for so long by people that were trying to keep us on the train was, hey, this is part of the plan. This is how he operates. It's all going to work out. Have some faith. And I do understand that. but it just never felt right from the start. It reminded me, the red flags before the season reminded me a lot of before Steve Crackthorpe's first season. For anybody that was around back then, it was the same thing. We all wanted to see the best of it, and it just, the wheels just never, I can't even say they fell off the wagon with him, because it's like they were never on the wagon. The wagon just sat there without wheels. And that's how I felt during this offseason. It was like the press conference was amazing. The press conference was a thing of beauty. We tied the community together. We had a lot of former Denny players, some Rick players, and we felt so united. He was a great public speaker, and I actually got on board then, because I was skeptical before he was hired. But then I was like, man, this could be a lot better than I thought. And then he went to New York, and from that moment, we've never had a concrete sense of, well, this is where we're going. This is his vision. And we've been left in the dark. And that works when you're succeeding. Nobody asks questions. But when you're not succeeding, you have to give fans an idea of what you're doing. And what he said in that press conference, and
then after the game yesterday, how many people did you see say, we got kids lining up to play for Kenny, we got blah, blah, blah? That's the same thing we heard last year. And who did we get? Devin Ree, Fabio, Brendan Huntley Hatfield, and Hersey Miller.
I think we do have, like, between Dennis Evans and it sounds like Trenton Flowers, we're in good with them. It's going to come down to the portal, because we need instant impact guys. Dennis Evans can be a rim protector right off the bat, but he needs to gain a little bit of weight. He's raw. I'm not saying that he's not a great ad. He's a great ad. Good job, staff, on Dennis Evans, if you can close that. But we have to hit the portal, and we have to land some instant impact guys, in particular guards.
Yep. And Kyle, I think that's one excuse we've heard, is that, the program was in such bad shambles that there's nothing Kenny Payne could have done to be successful this year. And I think it would have been a challenge. There's not many coaches who could have done it, but it's not impossible. I mean, look at Jerome Tang this year for Kansas State. I mean, they look great just after 1 year. And then my boy TJ, Iowa State's coach, he took a 4-win team to the tournament the very next season. So it's not impossible. No. It's not a valid excuse that the program was in such bad shape. Exactly. And I think I saw a stat the other day that the I can't remember if it was the top 50 or the top 25 transfers are all averaging 10 points per game. All of them.
Matt Cross is averaging 12.
Right. And, Amani Bates was not a dream chaser by Kenny Payne standards. But, I mean, he's at like 20 points a game for Eastern Michigan. It might be more than that, to be honest. And it's like just, so many excuses, one after another. It's like, we're done with excuses. I don't want to hear about what's going on. I just want to see production.
I want to see a tangible concrete plan that seems very realistic. And then I want to hear that we're executing this plan. I want to start hearing that we're in on these guys in the portal, and that we're not the third or fourth team as far as how often someone's contacting them from our staff. Sometimes we weren't even on the list. Like, we'd hear 5 or 6 teams that were pursuing someone very hard, and we wouldn't even be on the list after we thought we were in the lead. So Dennis Evans, Trenton Flowers, that's a great start, but the whole thing starts with this portal and instant impact guys. And as far as the season, let me be clear. I don't know about you guys, but what I would have considered a successful season with this roster was 15-15. I would have been fine with it. Not that that's a standard that we hold here, but I do understand he came into a tough situation. I understand he's a first-time head coach. And I do understand his roster was limited in a large part to his portal recruiting. But I will give you somewhat of a mulligan your first year. But 4-28 with the inexcusable losses we had, and we didn't win a single road or neutral game all year, I can't excuse that. I can't justify that. And I cannot blame that all on the players. And that seems to be what some people do. And that's your choice as a fan. I won't do it. I won't do it.
Well, and Kyle, I was kind of a little bit opposite of you about, little over a year ago, because when it was obvious, we were going to make a change last year. I know you were screaming from the mountaintops to, make a full search and go after certain other candidates. But I was one of those that was fully bought into Kenny Payne and thought that he was going to be a home run hire for us, and that this time, this time of year we were going to be ready for the tournament, and we'd be talking about what seed we're going to get. Not, if we were talking about 4, we were hoping that was seeding, not number of wins on the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, he went up to New York for those couple of weeks, and I kind of gave him a pass on it, because I was like, I could understand that, that big life change, you might need to take care of some things and get some affairs in order. But then it's like he was just stuck in neutral for so long, that it wasn't too long after that red flags started to occur. We started passing on guys that, it was reported that we were passing on guys like Emily Bates that you were kind of scratching your head over, and it was like, well, and I started giving Kenny
Sean
a pass.
McNeil.
Sean McNeil. That's a funny.
Mosley.
Yeah. We were
Yeah,
like,
I-
we're like, he's not the caliber of player that's going to play at Louisville. And like, he would probably been our second best player. I mean,
Right. And
Isaiah
I was giving him
Mosley
a
or whatever
pass
his
because I was
name
like,
is.
well, maybe he sees a character issue that maybe I don't see, because I'm not around these guys on a daily basis, and I'm not involved in their, I'm not meeting these guys face to face. So maybe there's something that, he sees that I don't know about. So I was kind of giving him a pass for a long time. And then we hit that Lenore Ryan game, and it was just like, nope, this ain't going to work. Like,
No.
and I was pretty much off the train then, because I just had a very bad feeling that, things weren't going to get better at that point, and they haven't. I mean, obviously where we're at now, but I was just totally stunned, because I thought for sure this was going to work out, and I wanted it to, because, being a former player, and then when he came on and he was welcoming back the former Denny players, and we were seeing all those guys that, under the Patino era weren't really welcome back. Being a little bit older fan than you guys, I was enjoying seeing some of those faces back around the program, and coming around talking about the Cardinals again, and that kind of thing. And I thought that was exciting. But to see where it's turned out, it's just been really disappointing, and sad for a person like me anyway.
Yeah. Well, Ash, I think everybody, myself included, I admittedly felt pretty much on an island before the hire, because I couldn't see it being this bad. So I'm not saying, but I was worried that at its worst, it could be this close to this bad. And I know some people will say, well, the people that are still skeptical of Kenny Payne and don't think he's going to turn this around just want to prove themselves right, because they didn't want him hired. You can either believe me or not. That is not the case with me. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong or if I'm wrong, especially if it's at the benefit of our program. It's like, yeah, I wanted to be wrong, but that doesn't mean I can lie to myself about my skepticism. I had natural, honest skepticism. Whether people agreed with that or not, that's up to them. But it wasn't me just putting my head in the sand to him being able to succeed. And I mean, I'm the same guy that Lamar Jackson's freshman year, I didn't think he was ready, and I was pushing for Kyle Bowen. To start, and then, of course, he plays in the UK game, throws, I think, 3 interceptions in the first quarter, and Lamar comes in, balls out, and then he balls out against Texas A&M, and I heard about it on social media. It's like, dude, you were all about some Kyle Bowen. And I was caught up in the magic of him beating UK that first time, 44-40, when we came all the way back, when we looked dead in the water, and he led us back. But he was pretty mediocre, and I don't know, man. I thought it would be better than this with him, and then I had to admit I was wrong. So long story short, if I thought Kyle Bowen was going to outplay Lamar Jackson, that's pretty bad in hindsight.
I remember.
I still hope Kenny Payne works out, but I'm not going to deny my natural skepticism that I'm very concerned, much more so than I was before he was hired.
Yeah, and then the comments yesterday, I'll go ahead and play those here in just a second. But the comments that he made at the press conference yesterday, acting like he was just caught completely off guard by the fact that people were concerned, that to me just shows an absolute lack of respect for the program and the historical level that it's obtained. And let's go ahead and jump right into those comments post game yesterday by Kenny.
I don't know how to answer that. Of course, I have not had one conversation with Josh Hurd about my future. I don't know if there's a reason to have a conversation with Josh Hurd about my future. I go to work every day. I love Josh. Josh says he loves me. There's nothing to talk about. I got a job to do. Still don't understand the question, but I can tell you I have one of the best staffs in college basketball. I can tell you that there are unique individuals that have had so much success in this game. I can't believe you just asked that question. They are great coaches, and they gave these kids love every day. So, I mean, I don't even understand the question. Like, what is there to evaluate?
I'll go ahead and just stop it right there. But like, I just can't imagine that was very genuine, to be honest.
Like, how do you not know what's going on? And then you also have your assistant coach the day before the game trolling fans on Twitter.
Well,
and you have a guy like Josh Jameson who is, nothing against him personally again, but he's somebody who does not have an assistant coaching background. Like, we know he loves the hardwood, but other than that, it's like, what is he at? What does he bring to the table? Right.
So he has a Dobo background, which I like. It's not a coaching role. They can't run practice. They can't do anything like that. So I would think he's essentially doing Justin Perez's job as the third assistant coach, just being the Dobo, because Justin Perez doesn't have a basketball background. And he's booking all the flights and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think, looking at the rest of the assistant coaches, obviously what Connor's alluding to was the whole Nolan trolling the fan base about the shoes deal, which again, it'd be kind of a whatever in some situations, but like given the season we've had, like just kind of seemed like a slap in the face. It's like, dude, you got a lot more to worry about than, trolling the fans right now. And then just like, we're the only team that doesn't show up the day before to practice. Like, I mean, there not only is there nothing fruitful happening on the court, but there's just no hope. I think that's what Ty mentioned in a comment just a couple of minutes ago. It's like, what do we have to look forward to? I mean, from my perspective, we have to look forward to 2025. That's about it.
Well, and the question, he actually elaborated, and I don't know where, we don't need to find that part of the video. I'll paraphrase, but I saw the extended version of that answer. And it was something about, why would you question these coaches when they won championships as players and they are successful people? And it's like, well, I feel like I'm decently successful at what I do for a living, but I probably couldn't be a basketball player. And yes, I understand that's not a apples to apples comparison. I understand that these guys did play, and so they have experience that I do not have. But how many guys have we seen that are successful at basketball that are not successful basketball coaches? So that's not a good answer. List. And I mean, Michael Jordan's the best player of all time. And I think we all would agree he's not a very good owner. At least his success has not been very good. Yeah. As far as his wins and losses, as far as the guys he's been able to bring there. But yeah, he's a super successful man in life. And these assistant coaches are, and Nolan Smith in particular, with what he went through and then developing his own identity, going to Duke, winning championships, being a successful young man, and then coming back to the university. Successful man. That doesn't mean you're getting it done as the assistant coach at the University of Louisville in the year 2022-2023 for our basketball season. It doesn't mean you're recruiting well enough, or at least weren't. Maybe that's starting to change. I certainly hope it is. But that's not the answer I want to hear. And then he also said something along the lines of they love these guys and they allow them to chase their dreams. And that's all I can ask of them. Well, you know what I would ask is that they teach these guys how to fight through screens like at the top of the key. I would like these guys to switch. I would like guys not to be out of position, which some of that's because we didn't have guards that were fast enough to keep up with the smaller guards on other teams, which goes back to recruiting. So I would also ask that we get a better plan together with recruiting. You can be nice. You can love up on guys. I don't have a problem with that. But when that's all you ever focus on, or at least to us fans, that's what it sounds like. That's all you focus on. And that's the answer you give as far as why would you even ask me these questions? I have one of the best, if not the best staff in the country because they love on people and they allow them to chase dreams. No, that's not going to cut it. And that's not the answer after going 4-28 with a pissed off fan base who's been through hell and back when it comes to all these sanctions, the dark cloud. It's finally lifted. We're trying to rebuild. Like, we're not in a place. I mean, you're lucky you're getting 4,000 fans in the Yum right now, because I'm not excusing the fact that people jump ship, but I can certainly understand it. I certainly understand why at some point you throw your hands up and say, look, this isn't even fun anymore. And so the ones of us that still care, don't piss on our leg and tell us it's raining. Come on, man. That's
I mean, I was at that last NCAA game we had against Minnesota, and I would have fought pretty strongly that wouldn't be the last NCAA game I'd see for 5 years. I mean, I would have bet a large majority of my income that would not happen, and it's mind-boggling, to be honest.
Okay.
In fairness, we would have been there in 20, but
yeah, we were starting to slide.
That's still 3 years,
right?
But yeah, we would have been there, and I like that team. But look, we've talked about the frustrations. We're appalled by his answer in the press conference. I hope that that's just poor PR or the inability to speak and relay his thoughts adequately in front of a camera and a bunch of people. I hope that's what it was. I don't know. So with all that being said, we talked about the issues, but where do we go from here? What do you guys want to see out of him? Connor, what do you want to see out of Kenny Payne in this offseason?
Well, the one thing we don't have to worry about yet is the February fade. It's hard to fade when you only have 4 wins.
Yeah, we had the June fade starting in the portal, whipping in the portal.
But you have to get more than one capable guard. And if Ellis leaves, you don't have any capable guards. Are you going to run Hersey Miller out there and play him 40 minutes a game?
I think we'll land somebody. But, yes, they have to be impact guys.
Like the Harvard kid that went in, yesterday, today, or whatever, the one that averages like 17 a game? Like, why aren't we talking to that kid? He also fits the description. He's 6'6", so I don't know why. I don't know why he has stuck to him.
I want guys that can keep up with the faster guards. We got burned so many times on switches. A lot of that was communication, but some of that was guys not being able to keep up because they're playing out of position. Mike James shouldn't be trying to keep up with a small 2 guard. He needs to be back at the 3.
Well, like I was watching Georgia Tech today, and they have 3 dudes that play the 1, 2, and 3, and I don't think they're over 6'5", maybe. So, and they beat us once, but we didn't look great in that game. We got lucky to win at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know where to go.
My fear is that, based on the way he reacted to those questions in the post game, is that, he's not going to be willing to encourage any of those guys, on the roster to leave or look elsewhere. because obviously he doesn't see much wrong with the program.
Well, I'm gonna just tell you they actually this morning I heard a different part of Kenny Payne after the game, a post game. I don't know if it was in a tunnel or what, but he did allude to, and he actually had a really good answer then, which is why I'm so confused why he answered this completely different just a few minutes earlier or later. Chronologically, I'm not sure which came first, but he had made the comment that he has to evaluate which players are deserving of wearing a Louisville jersey and which ones are not.
He said that to Jody, didn't he?
It may have been to Jody. I'm not even sure. They just played the clip this morning on 93.9 with his answer, and he said,
okay,
we really have to evaluate because some of these guys do not understand what that means. So that kind of goes back to my comment earlier, though, which is you can't just throw it all on the players, though. So the whole alleviating the whole staff, as if that was part of my plan of corrections the day after the season, was to sit down with his staff, since he's obviously getting a second year from all indications. It's like, okay, well, what are we doing on the staff? Specifically, a guy who doesn't have a lot of experience, like a Josh Jameson, who we haven't heard anything about. What is he even doing? And maybe he's doing a lot, but again, this whole being quiet, moving in silence thing, yeah, that's great when you're successful, but when you're not, people start asking questions. People want to know why we're not seeing anything. Why is it not coming into fruition, into some positive development within the program? And so you start to look at the staff. That's my natural thought, is the very first thing you do is you look at them. Yeah. But he's already said, I'm not doing that. Like, why would I do that? Why would you even ask me about that? I have the best staff in the country. They love these kids.
Okay,
well, hopefully
the fans love the kids too. Like, it's not on us to say, hey, you need to do this. It's on the coaching staff.
Yeah.
We love Lamar Jackson. We love Donovan. We love Asia Durr. Like, that's not the point. You can love the kid and still coach him hard.
You're on mute, Josh.
Josh, you're muted.
Sorry. So I was just going to say, without going into specifics, I think the big thing for me is I need a sense of urgency, whether that's in recruiting, whether that's in, getting the right guys in, assistant coaches. I mean, anything. I just need to feel a sense of urgency, and like Kenny Payne's going to show me something that he's, not just keeping with the status quo, which I agree with everybody's comments that, his presser would have told you, we are going down the right path. It just takes time. Well, I would argue we are not on the right path whatsoever. I mean, a 180 might be better than where we're currently going. So I just need that sense of urgency so I have something to look forward to.
Well, and I wonder if those comments that you were referencing, Kyle, didn't come after that press conference, because I'm wondering if maybe that after he thought about the questions that he got at the press conference, and maybe that triggered something that, hey, we need to do a serious eval of what's going on here. And this is just me speculating at this point.
Well,
I have no idea.
That I hope that's the case. But my bigger, I guess, fear is I feel like the narrative has been put, and there are people that have been to Kenny Payne practices recently who have talked to Kenny, and he's basically had no problem alluding to the fact that the roster isn't what he would like right now, and that he wants to have a better roster, which is fine. But that is not the only problem we have. And that goes back to me saying, I'm looking at this roster, and I do think we could go 15-15 with this roster. I don't think that it's something where we are going to knock it out of the park with this team, but we didn't do as well as we probably could have with this roster. And that goes beyond just the players. That goes back to coaching as well. So what are you doing? Not only what are you doing, what are you doing with your staff? And that's what I want to know. And it concerns me. And I feel like, I guess what I'm saying is, my fear is that he said that about the players because he doesn't have a problem saying, hey, we need to figure out who needs to wear, who's worthy of wearing this uniform and who isn't. Because in his mind, and my fear is in his mind, it's just all the players. And once he gets the right players, he's going to crush it here. I'm just not so sure about that.
And the problem is, if let's say he lets go 6 guys, we have what, 3 coming in right now? And this isn't including L and Curry leaving. So we might have 8. Are we guaranteed that he can get 8 guys in here that are going to make an impact?
If they're dream chasers, maybe.
Oh, God.
I'd like that term to retire. It's not that you shouldn't help kids chase their dreams, but it's just if you were crushing it in the last off season with that term and guys were just rolling in, I would probably like the term, but now I just associate it with every single time we whipped on a guy, everybody would be like, must not be a dream chaser. They must not like chasing dreams. Then I started calling them reality chasers because they were living in the real world and they saw the product on the court. And so it just became a nightmare. Maybe they need to revamp their semantics this offseason and come up with some different phrases for what they're doing. But the bottom line is they have to have a better plan and they have to hit the ground running. I compare it to Jeff Brom. You left for New York for whatever. We didn't see anything come out of that. So maybe you were making calls, developing connections. I question it because it took forever to get any assistance on the staff. It took even longer to get a strength and conditioning guy. I think towards the end of the summer, we got that. Everything moved so slow. We basically lost a portal season for the most part and scrambled to get guys like Fabio. And we landed Devin Ree, who he can't even get on the court for this team.
We weren't even sure Fabio was going to show up to class in August.
Yeah, we didn't even know. But I mean, and it was patchwork is what it was. So I want to see some urgency because, like, I compared to Jeff Brom when he started in football, and within 2 days he was in Florida recruiting, and then a couple of days after that, he went to California and secured everybody. As far as all the California connections, except the one guy we thought we were going to lose before Jeff Brom took the job, which was DeAndre Moore.
Yeah, he did the exact opposite of what Kenny did.
The exact opposite, and that's what coaches normally do because you start off, you hit the ground running. You don't start a marathon by walking.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you don't sprint right out a marathon's not the best example because you don't sprint right out the gate. You pace yourself. I guess you actually don't start a 100-meter dash by walking because it's too late. It's too late. Everybody else is sprinting out the gate. And that's what you start a coaching hire, especially at a prestigious top 10 basketball program. One you played for and won a championship for under a legendary Hall of Fame coach. You hit the ground running. It's just natural. And maybe he did, but the results certainly don't appear to be that way. It just doesn't appear to be that way. And then we never heard anything otherwise. And then at the end of the year, when a guy in a press conference questions it about the staff, I don't understand why you're even asking me that question.
Well, it's funny.
What's there to see?
The guy that asked, I don't think is local media. So if the national media is asking, we know why.
Yeah.
Because our local media won't do it.
And usually national media is slower to react to stuff like that because they don't have as much of a pulse on the local fan base as a local media would, though, too.
Right. Yeah, and do you think Jody would have said, hey, Kenny, are you coming back next year with all 3 of your assistants? No, because Jody's not going to ask that question.
Right.
You're muted again, Josh.
And that's fine. That's up to them. I mean, everybody – I get it, especially locally, but yeah, the national media, it's odd to see the contrast between what a lot of them are seeing versus what a lot of the local media are seeing. And it just goes back to questioning, like, what is going on? Because I remember before Chris Mack was hired, Kenny Payne came up as a guy, like, what about Kenny Payne? We're going to interview Kenny Payne. And I feel like an entire fan base just about, except for a very small minority of people, was like, no. Absolutely not. Not a chance. What are we doing? And then he goes to New York for 2 years as an assistant. What changed? And I think some of the logic was, well, Chris Mack didn't work out, so why not give him a chance now? But it's like, okay, just because one coach doesn't work out doesn't mean that, well, the coach we really didn't think was going to work out, all of a sudden we're on board. Well, he must be the answer.
Well, when I talked to a coach, he said there's a reason he hasn't been a head coach and he's 55, 56 years old. And when he was hired, he didn't know how to run a practice script, and apparently he still doesn't, or we wouldn't have gone 4-28. But there's a reason he's never been a head coach, and there's no reason that a top 10 program hires a guy with no head coaching experience. Zero reason.
Right. So going from this point forward, doesn't sound like we're going to have any staff changes. That being said, my expectation now that the very first thing I was hoping he would do, he's already acting like that's crazy. So it's like we're off to a great start again. But the second thing was hit the portal hard as soon as that thing. When is it open, Connor? Is it May 1st?
Monday, baby.
This Monday?
Football opens May 1st.
Oh,
okay.
Men's basketball.
That's right.
Opens,
Yeah. Portal is like during
men's basketball opens Mondays, open for 60 days. It does overlap with football, so that'll be fun. But it opens, I guess, technically at 12:01 Monday night, but you got 2 business days to put them in, or 12:01 Sunday night after the selection show, going into Monday morning.
So all the players from the other bad teams can come to us.
Yes,
that aren't playing in the tournament.
I was going to say, I think Tron put an interesting comment in the Twitter feed here. He said that for him to feel hopeful, he's going to need to start to see some recruiting wins and then like a 4-2 or 5-1 start. At what point would you all start to show hope? Like, what would it take for you to be like, maybe he has turned this around? Because I think from my perspective, I'm going to need a little bit more than the sunshine pumper Tron.
How about flip it around and win our exhibition by 40, and then
shout out the Discord gang.
And then
shout out Discord gang.
Hashtag Discord gang. I'm gonna say that I'm gonna be skeptical until the very end next year. Like I'm gonna need to see us make the tournament before I buy in.
Hey,
otherwise I'm out still.
If we win the exhibition by 40, that flips at 50 points from last year.
That doesn't do anything for me though.
So for me, that's a 2-part question. It's a good question, Josh. The first part, what can give me some hope? And that would be that we hit the portal hard, land some impact guards in particular, but also some bigs. Like I keep hearing we're out on Churchill Boss as far as being super connected. It feels like we got in early and developed a connection when he was a unheard of guy out there in Africa. But now it sounds like some guy, he came to the States, knocked it out of the park some, and bigger schools got involved. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it sounds like we've gotten a little cold. He would be a great, to me, based on what I've heard, what little I've seen, he seems like he could be an instant impact guy. He's got the physicality, the body to bang down low. We need more of that. We need toughness, but we need a couple instant impact guards. That will at least give me like a little more hope at the very least, because I will compare it to last offseason when we just kept watching guys that we thought we were in good, not even list us in the top 3. We watched high school guys with family members associated with the university and helping athletics that didn't even visit and went to our rival. So if we can at least improve that, that's the first step. The second step would be that we start to see wins early in the season when the schedule's not as good. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is that we make the tournament. And I don't want to hear, I'm one of those. I'm like an Ethan Moore, which I know how people feel about him, which I love Ethan.
You're just a hater.
That's just a hater, apparently. Well, I guess I am too. I think Ethan is a passionate fan who I've talked to Ethan for years. I have nothing but love for the guy. And he said it best. And I think Nick Coffey may have alluded to this as well, but I know Ethan Morris said it. It's tournament or bust. And it has to be, because this isn't going to be a 3 or 4 year rebuild. This isn't the pre-transfer portal era. This isn't the pre-NIL era.
It's not like
you
you
can
have
be
to
a bad
sit out
basketball
a year.
team and throw NIL at people, and Dennis Evans and potentially Trenton Flowers are proof of that. But then it also comes down to the transfer portal. You got to knock that out of the park, and then you gotta get a whole different team in there. We've seen other coaches and programs do it, so there's no excuse. And because it took you longer That's not going to work for us as fans. The majority of us, when we've been through like subpar seasons for a while now, for a long time, to go through another horrible season next year, it's not an option. And Kenny Payne has to coach and run this program like it's his final year. It's last chance you. We got to do it now. And we have to make the tournament. That's my opinion.
So I've seen polls on Twitter, polls on Facebook, whatever. Name your social media. I'm sure I've seen polls on it for how many wins we have to get next season. And people are starting at 10, 15, 18, and 20. And there's nothing about just going to the tournament. And everybody's saying like 10 to 15 wins, they'd be fine with it.
Well, and some of those are UK fans.
Yeah, that's going to be fake. That's fake polls.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a Louisville fan, a UK fan posted that, I'm going to pick like 5 wins.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that'd be really good. You guys, 5 wins, baby.
And the thing of it is, I said earlier, we got to make the tournament. But if we win 15 games and then just have some miracle run through the ACC tournament to get in the NCAA, that doesn't count. Like, we need to have a good season next year and legitimately make the tournament.
You can't, like, Georgia Tech, what was it, 2 years ago that they got hot during the COVID tourney and just happened to win the ACC, and last year Virginia Tech got hot and just happened to win the ACC.
Right.
Like, Georgia Tech lost today, but they were 17-16 going into today, and if they won 3 more games, like, just because you're 20-16 and you won the conference doesn't mean it's successful. Like, you just got hot at the right time.
Right.
True, but I mean, I'm one that I would take that.
Oh, I would too. I would love having an ACC title.
Just make the tournament. I never thought I'd be in a position as a Louisville basketball fan where it's like, just make the tournament at all costs. Sell your soul. Just do it. Come on, man.
Well, and
Wear
I never
shoes instead of Nikes. Just do whatever you have to do. Take some risk.
To piggyback off that, Kyle, I never thought we'd be at a point where we were recruiting guards worse than Chris Mack did. Right? Like, we thought, oh man, like at least KP's going to be pulling in guards. Apparently, he won't pull in any. So
it's this narrative that like people that are hard on Kenny Payne were never this hard on Chris Mack. Let's just cut that because I was so over Chris Mack.
How many times did we say
Chris Mack also didn't win 4 games his first year,
right.
and I was over him. So, and I think a lot of people that are frustrated right now, we're frustrated then as well.
So 2 things.
But yes, we are recruiting much worse.
So 2 things. How many times in Discord, 2 years ago, I guess, or a year and a half ago, did we say that Chris Mack needs to be fired, or why can't Chris Mack recruit a guard?
Yeah.
Like,
why are we lowering standards? Like, we wouldn't do that. This idea that we weren't as hard on him and now all of a sudden we've raised the bar. No, we had high standards then. I have high standards now, and I've been one that's never really bought into this whole NCAA dark cloud excuse. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because that's behind us no matter what people think. And I'm okay with people. I understand the argument otherwise. I understand that I could be wrong. I'm okay with that. But bottom line is that stuff's all behind us. So I don't want to hear – I'm to the no excuse zone. Like, do what you have to do to get this team, get this roster revamped, and make the tournament. And if that means you keep this coaching staff because you think they're the best coaching staff or one of the best coaching staffs in the entire country and that nobody should ask otherwise, well, then I expect to see it because we did not see it this year. We didn't see it.
Well, and it's bogus. In my opinion, I respect other people's positions on the NCAA cloud because everybody's entitled to their opinion and all that jazz. But we saw plenty of other schools that were under investigation to the NCAA that were recruiting just fine. Yeah. So I kind of felt like that was just a bullshit excuse, to be honest.
Kansas won a damn national championship.
Yeah.
Well, the argument was that we had multiple sanctions, but
that's just
my argument is look at what LSU did. I mean, look at LSU as a perfect example. Now, I don't know. I think they faded as the year went on. But nonetheless, they started off pretty successful. I don't know what their record is now, but nonetheless, I'm just saying they're not in the position we are in. They're nowhere near where we're at.
They're
Right.
playing in the day of shame of the SEC tournament right now. They're like 13-17 or something like that.
Yeah, so not great. I knew that they started off pretty strong and faded, and that's like I said, I was hoping for 15-15. So right about where LSU is. I mean, I understand it. I didn't expect us to be a tournament team this year. That was if we overachieved, in my opinion.
I don't think we'd be off as a fan base as a whole. I don't think people would be grabbing their pitchforks and be up in arms if we were, a 15-win team. Like, I just don't think that would be the case. So
No,
there'd be a few, but they'd be a very small.
yeah.
And this whole idea that we, like, people that kind of have been thinking like a lot of us are a small vocal minority. I could agree with that in June. I do not think that's the case in March.
How many people have said, I'm canceling my season tickets?
Well, I mean, and that's it. It's like when people say, oh, well, you're all the small minority of people. You're just very loud and vocal. I'm like, well,
Look
where
at the
are
Yum
all
Center.
the fans? Where are they at? They're not at the Yum.
For senior day, how many, like, I know that the SIDs add, X amount to whatever the actual total attendance is, but there might have been 3,000 people in there on senior night.
I once worked. This is a little bit off topic because you're talking about the SIDs in attendance, but I once worked at a school that whatever the date was, that was going to be the last days or the last numbers in the attendance figure. So totally get. So it was the 21st day of the month. The last two digits of the attendance number was going to be 21. It's just those numbers are always kind of bogus or whatever you release.
I think we add $500.
So, question from the comments. This is coming from Ty. He wants to know how we feel Trenton Flowers is going to fit in if he were to be added to our team, and what we would expect out of him if he were. So, to take a step back, there's a rumor that Trenton Flowers is A, coming to Louisville, and B, that he could possibly reclass and be there for next season. Obviously, there's we don't know what the team's going to look like. We don't know who's staying. We don't know who's going to be added. But what do you guys feel that Trenton Flowers could add to a team next year? We know he's athletic. I think a lot of people have said he's, if not the most athletic, one of the most athletic guys in the class of 24. So what do you guys see his skill set as if you've had a chance to look at any of his film?
If he's coming in 23, he's a reclass, and I don't like it.
I think if that's the only way you can get Trenton Flowers and otherwise he will reclass and go somewhere else, you absolutely take a talent like that. And I still think it's a good move overall for the long term. But am I expecting Trenton Flowers to reclass and be an impact player for next year? Absolutely not.
No.
There are very few reclasses that are instant impacts. And Trenton Flowers' game still has a lot of work. Now, that don't get me wrong, people are going to take that wrong. Trenton Flowers has the potential to be a great player. And if Kenny Payne's staff land him, whether it's a reclass or not, it's a big boost to a program that desperately needs it. Because I mean, the guys that we've been recruiting are not on that level of potential for the most part, except for maybe
especially
Brandon Huntley Hatfield, but he has yet to tap into it. And he was a reclass, and he had a year at Tennessee. So it hardly ever works instantly, and we need help next year. So, yes, take the man. If you can't get him, I'd prefer him in 24. I'd prefer him in another year. He needs to become a better shooter. He needs to hone some of his skills, his ball handling skills, and I think he will develop. And I know he's like 6'8", I think it is, so he'd be like a stretch 4 maybe.
He fits the description of a wing.
Or a wing, but he needs to work on a shot some in today's college basketball the way it is. And I think he was a 31% three-point shooter. So he's not a finished product, but man, it would be a great ad. I prefer it in a 24 class. If you have to take him as a reclass, take him now and just hope he develops in a couple of years. But he does not address next year's team as far as instant impact. That's my opinion. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched a lot of his film. That's kind of why I did pass this one off. But from what I've read about him, it sounds like he has all the potential. It's just he's not quite polished from
Right.
and this is coming from comments of people who have watched a lot of film on him, is that, he's probably not going to have much of an impact as a reclass. Now, what he has going for him is that he would probably be joining a team that was just recently 4-23. So wouldn't take a whole lot to be impactful on a team like that. But I hope, again, not much different to the way I talk about Kenny Payne, just because I'm skeptical, I hope he blows me out of my expectations out of the water and is 10 times better than I would have expected. But
I hope he averages 30 next year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have nothing.
Let's be realistic. It's going to be for a regular freshman, it's normally a transition. I mean, I was looking forever before we started this podcast for the stat, but it sounds like I think out of the top 100 players in the country right now, I don't know if it was just based on scoring or what metrics they use, but the overwhelming majority of them were transfer players and very few of them were high school freshmen. And that was interesting. I wish I had the specific numbers in front of me, but it just goes to show you how difficult it is for freshmen to come in, especially with guys that were one and done, and a lot of the talent was just leaving after a year. A lot of these guys are staying now for NIL packages that were like fringe second round type, late first round NBA players. They're coming back, like a Trace Jackson Davis at IU. He's come back twice now, and they thought
now he's a first round pick.
And he's just one example, but there's many like that. I know Oscar Shibwe, a lot of those guys, they come back now. And that makes it even harder on these freshmen to come in and be instant impact. So then when you start talking about a reclass freshman, their bodies, I mean, that's 17 to 18 years old. That development that happens in is so crucial for whatever reason. That age seems to be like a peak time. So when you get somebody that's 18 going on 19, they're usually far ahead of the curve for somebody 17 going on 18.
Didn't Neil say that he was already 18? And
is he?
And he was the age of a senior or something like that.
Okay, well that would change. I didn't know that.
So yeah, I didn't know that either.
I stand corrected there, but nonetheless, you bring the guy in if you can, absolutely. And if he will not stick it out another year in high school and hone some of his skills, you bring him in now, and that's a good ad. But this team next year is going to be made or broken based on the portal.
Because portal kids have the experience, which helps, because the college game is different from the high school game. I don't care if you go to prep school. I don't care where you go. Prep school and college basketball are two totally different things. Right. You can have a shot clock in prep school. It doesn't matter.
You have the strength and conditioning of a college program. If you've made a tournament, you've had very high pressure situations. Doesn't get any more high pressure in March Madness.
Let's just throw this hypothetical out there. Mott Stockman is a 23 reclass, and he's going against Oscar Shibwe. That man would get murdered.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that. I don't know where you're.
I don't know why
he has a 23.
So
you're using like a worse player.
Body type.
Lost me when you said Motts. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We'll just use Dennis Evans and pretend he's like a 17-year-old. I mean,
okay, Dennis Evans going against Oscar Shibwe. Oscar Shibwe has 5 years now, 6 years of college conditioning.
Yeah.
Versus Dennis Evans, who's been at whatever school in Minnesota he's been at. Yeah. Or I don't even know if he's from Minnesota, but whatever.
Yeah, he's from Minnesota.
The strength and conditioning is just totally different. And you see that in kids that come in. That's why football, they have summer access. Mm-hmm. That's why football has 6 weeks in the summer that kids can come in and work out. And then both basketballs have it too, but you see it more in football.
Yeah, I saw Ross. I'm reading Ty's comment, but I saw Ross said he made a point. If you bring Trenton Flowers in for 23, that's fine, but he's a bench player, and you develop him into a role player off the bench, and that's I think that's what most of us are saying as well.
Yeah,
and then you hope in a year or two he becomes a star. But again, with this coaching set, I guess we can lead into that real quick. I mean, I don't want to drag this on super long. But do we think if we don't make the tournament next year, even if we hover around 15-15 at best, or if we do worse than that, are we talking about a coaching change this time next season?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, and I was
Not
adamant.
only us, we're talking about it now, most of us. I'm talking
Well,
about the
and here's
University
the
of
thing.
Louisville, the leadership,
Yes.
Josh Hurd, and everybody involved in that decision. Are they talking about a coaching change?
I think that depends, like, because you know, even as me as a fan, I'm gonna hedge a little bit because I said initially that it was tournament or bust. But say like we come out rolling, and then there's just like a few catastrophic injuries that take place, and then we struggle down the stretch. Well, maybe then you give them a pass. So I think there's a lot of variables that could come into play.
Okay.
So when you say 15-15, it's really hard to say, well, what was the quality of the 15-15?
No injuries. Everything runs fine.
That's
Yeah.
a great point. Like this year. So like this year where there weren't any major injuries, but that is a great point. And yes, I think that you would make an exception if you have a good season and then you guys just get hurt left and right. Or
Let's
key
say we
guys.
go out and we beat Kentucky by like 25 points. I mean, that always raises morale just alone.
I'll
right
give
there.
him an extension right there.
I won't, but I'll give him a very good congratulations. But it's because tournament or bust for me, unless like Ash alluded to, there are some beyond normal circumstances. But no, what I'm saying is if we have a 15-15 or worse season and our guys are relatively healthy and there's no major out of left field craziness going on, does this leadership push to keep him? Because I've heard fans on both sides like me say tournament or buzz, and I've heard other guys say, well, 10 wins would be great progress.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean,
saying what
Set
people have
yourself
said.
up with that low bar. That was the plan.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
yeah, Kyle, I think there's some I don't know the best word to use, but I think from what I've heard, the university president would have to be somewhat bought into that plan as well, and to help kind of push the board to move on to a new coach. So I think there's a lot of moving parts to it. I would hope so, but again, with the last 5-6 years we've had, I'm not going to try to guess what this administration is going to do because they're probably going to make a worse choice than the worst case scenario I could think of.
Well, and
I wish I could say you're being a pessimist, but there's a lot of evidence that backs up your stance.
I do think that there's also a point to be made that like the university, the president and the board do have to be fiscally responsible with the department. But I think that actually lends itself to more toward a coaching change because of the fact that like, we think attendance and the pulse of the fans is down now. Imagine what it is a year from now if things are really not that much better going into 24-25. I mean, it's going to be even worse then.
Well, I think you're going to have so much apathy, which you've already got a lot of. And I think you're going to have people fighting like they do now on social media, like the vocal people. But for the most part, it's already starting to happen. Most part, people are just going to say, screw this.
Yeah, so it's not any better the fiscally
badminton team and play badminton with my family and do something like lame instead of watching Louisville basketball.
So to change the
subject, the worst case scenario of what you could possibly replace Louisville basketball with. But my point is that's going to be preferred over watching this product if they just tank again. And most people are just going to throw their hands up and say, screw this.
So we can end with this, but to change the subject real quick, I just saw on Twitter from last night from a Kentucky website. So think about it. Think about this. Caden Mormon, a running back from Franklin County, is coming to Louisville. He is good. Very good.
3-star, 4-star.
3-star running back from Kentucky.
7-star.
Yeah, 7-star running. No, he's a 3-star from Franklin County.
Does he have wheels?
He's top 1,000.
No, I meant like, is he fast or is he like a flashy cut, like a guy with known for cutting?
He's 205, so he's more of a
bruiser.
I guess like Tyon Evans kind of. He may be sneaky quick, but I don't know.
Connor,
Tyon Evans was fast.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I'm confused because Own 3 isn't high on him for some reason. Just seems weird, right?
So this says
They'll be a lot lower if he commits here.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So
No.
Oh, did he already commit?
247 says he's an 87 3-star 0.8644 composite. Number 85 athlete in the country.
Number 8. What? That doesn't add up. Like an 86 is usually like a mid 3-star, or isn't it? Or maybe a high 3-star, but then he's the 85th best player in the country.
85th best athlete in the country.
Oh, athlete. Okay, that makes sense.
Athlete.
Okay. So
Sand Payne.
is this 20?
Oh God.
Is this a 24?
No, this is a 23 kid.
Oh, 23 kid. So a late edition.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
In the pod on with some good news. Well, fellas, I hear a baby that needs
Here we
some
go.
assistance.
He ran an
top.
11.7900 meter.
He's going
I'm
to keep
about to
coming with
run.
that.
I'm about to run 11.79 meter upstairs. I have to use the bathroom. Baby's crying. It's a hot mess up there. I got to take care. And I apologize if anybody at the beginning. I try to be quiet, but my stepson walked in, asked me something. I was like, "Hey,
I didn't hear nothing."
You'll probably hear it on the replay." But I was like, "Hey, I'm trying to run a podcast." And I tried to whisper it, but I mean, my mouth was like right next. So I'm sure it was a hot mess. But hey, it is what it is.
Any last words, Josh?
You're muted again.
I love that mute button, No, but like I said on the last podcast, I'm glad it's finally over. We could focus on football. We could focus on hopefully Kenny Payne getting us some good recruiting news. And I think kind of the sentiment that we all follow here is Kenny Payne, the coach, needs to show us something. We love Kenny Payne, the person, but Kenny Payne, the coach, really needs to step it up.
How about you, Connor? Any last words?
Go baseball. Go to Omaha.
How about you, Kyle? Anything else to add?
I think they're sick of hearing from me. Go Cards.
All right,
Go
guys.
Cards.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Turn on those notifications so you'll catch us next time. Thanks a lot, and go Cards.
Go Cards.
Don't puke.